Hello and welcome. Here I'm going to talk about the end of the year book tag. This is a delightful one that was created by Ariel Bissett many years ago. This one is slightly updated from her new one and I like it a lot. It is going to talk about transitioning into autumn, some books that I still want to read, some books that I have not read yet or finished, and then I'm going to check in on my goals and talk about if I have decided to change any goals for next year. So the first one is, are there any books you've started and not finished? The first one is this very large book. This is War and Peace, and I knew it was large going into it, but like, sister, look at that. I think 6 hours in. I hope to read this in November. It is going to be my big Russian classic in November because right now it is October. On a much smaller thing, we have Answers to Prayer, and this is a beautiful collection of George Mueller's thoughts. He is someone who I have always found inspiration from. He was a Christian who was a preacher and also ran orphanages, and he very famously fed thousands of children, and he never asked for money. He relied on people's generosity, and that has always been a huge inspiration for me. So I loved reading this, and this is a book that I borrowed from someone's mom who has been like, hey, are you gonna give me back that book? So I need to finish it by the end of the year. Another one is The River Girl. This is the third collection in the collected poems of Wendy Cope. I love the first two. I love her writing. I think she's going to be a new favorite poet. And yeah, I just got distracted in the middle of this reading and I never continued. And because of the fact that it's a narrative poem rather than various poems, like it was written for stage production, it is harder just to dive back in. Those are three books that I need to finish, as well as Howard's End by Ian Forster. I started this in June and I read the first couple chapters and adored it, and then as I was traveling I did not go back to it. Three of them are books that I'm absolutely loving, and I believe that I will love War and Peace if I can fully get into it. It's just like, it feels very overwhelming to read such a long book, so I am hopeful of that. The next one is you have an autumnal book to transition, and I think I had two. One of the ones, I think it was just random, but like September 1st came along and I was like, you know what I want to do? Read a random classic novel. And I feel like that is often my autumn. I read a lot of weird classics. It is one of the times in which I read the most. And it is when I go most unhinged and off the wire in the books that I read. And I think Flush by Virginia Woolf fully fits that because it is a fictional biography of Elizabeth Barrett Browning's dog. And why on September 1st, with no previous plans of reading it, did I just think, yeah, I really need to read that book. And I think that defines autumn for me. Also on October 1st, I read An Old Man's Love, and I think Trollope is a really good representation of fall for me. He is some like large Victorian dramas about love and politics and all of those things, and yeah, I feel like classics are often my autumn, and these books really represent autumn for me. Question number 3 is, are there any new releases that you are still waiting for? And not a lot, because I don't really look that much to new releases, especially this year. One of my goals was to take a step back, to not try to keep up with books and just let the cards fall as they do. But a classic author, as you may tell, my shelf of fantasy is very occupied by Marissa Meyer, and she has been a favorite author since I was in my mid-teens, and she has a new book called The House of Fear. It is a story about a woman who can speak to ghosts, and she has one thing of expertise about this man who killed 3 wives many years ago, and his great-grandson hires her to expunge his ghost from the house. Which sounds very fun, and then it turns into a murder as well. I trust Marissa Meyer very well. I have loved every single book by her, except for the last book of every one of her series. I don't know why. There can be 5 books and I can adore every single one of them, and then I don't like how she concludes stories. I think she's a fantastic writer, but like not good at like the climax of a story. But that doesn't matter to me because she writes amazing books leading up to that final book. And sometimes even the final book is pretty good. It's just like the last 100 or 200 pages, I'm like, no. I have read every single fiction book she has ever published as a sole author, so I'm not going to break the trend now. Is there 3 books you want to finish by the end of the year? And there's a lot more than 3, but I'm going to stick it to 3, and there's going to be a theme. First of all is Half Breed. I've been wanting to read this book by Maria Campbell ever since Ariel recommended it on her podcast, so as this is her tag, it feels very appropriate to bring it here. And yeah, I've been putting it off because I know that it's going to have a lot of hard topics in it, but after reading Dependency, I just really feel the need to read some hard-hitting memoirs, and I think both of them deal with drug abuse and difficult things, and yeah, I really want to read this book. And then the other 2 books I want to finish are for my 1925 list. I don't always make a video about it, but I always intend to read books that turn 100 years. So last year I read some books that came out in 1924, and this year I'm reading some books that took place in 1925. So two of the books that I want to read still is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, and yeah, I just had a lot of luck with Virginia Woolf. So I definitely need to read this book. I think because it's her most popular, I have been putting it off for such a long time. I really mashed potato books that I'm excited for. But yeah, I think I've read 4 or 5 of her other works, so I really should read Mrs. Dalloway, and it's a 1925 release, so I think that's very appropriate. And another book I've been putting off for way too long is the sequel to Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and this one is called But Gentlemen Marry Brunettes, and this is by Anita Loos. I read this book, I think 2 years ago, and it like blew me out of the water. It was so funny, so hilarious. I have an entire review where I just like, I'm in raptures about this book. The sequel was published in 1925, so it turns 100, so I definitely want to read it. I own it, and yeah, I have a plan for this, which I will say now, just so I can hope it. We did a 1920s kind of prohibition jazz age party in the summer for my friend's birthday, and it was a murder mystery. It was amazing. We all dressed up, and one of my friends went full out. She got like a short blonde wig. She did her makeup crazy and stuff like that. And right after that party, I said, I need to borrow that wig so that I can review this book. So that is my promise. By the end of this year, I am going to have a review of The Gentlemen Marry Brunettes in a crazy wig dressed up as a flapper. That is what I am promising in this video. So I hope that I actually do it. The next question is asking, have you noticed any trends in your reading? And I have, particularly rereading. Like I purposely went into this year trying to be a slower pace of reading, trying to be more intentional, trying to read some books I haven't read in a really long time. So there are several books that were mashed potatoes that I've been putting out for years and years and years that I've conquered, and I'm really proud of that. But I also have reread a ton of books, especially a lot of classics that I loved, and I wanted to revisit as an older, more mature reader and see how do I feel about them now. Some of them I was investigating if my mind had changed, if I like them a lot more than I used to. Some of them I am seeing if I still love them as much. And when I did some math, I found out that 14 out of 70 books I have reread, so that is about 20%, and I'm really proud of that. And the next question is looking at goals, so I will talk about that as well. I quietly went into this year with no goals videos or anything like that because I just wanted to take it really low-key, and I really did do that. And my original goal in my head though was to read 2/3 classics. Currently I'm at 50%. I read 35 classics out of 70. I really wanted to take my mind off trying to read for specific reasons and just to read books that I wanted to read some classics, read some books I've been wanting to read for so long, and to read more physical books. I have not done that as great. I started the year great with reading a lot of physical books. Now I'm currently only at 21%, which I have definitely seeped back into using audiobooks as my primary reading, which I really enjoy audiobooks, but I often read through audiobooks because of the fact that I know I'm such a slow physical reader as someone who has dyslexia. I love audiobooks so much, but I also really love physical reading, and I often choose audiobooks because it is faster, not because it's the only way I can enjoy that story. So hopefully the next couple months I will dive back into reading books physically. My other one is I really wanted to go into comics because I love comics, and a couple years ago that was like a huge chunk of my reading, and I read one comic. It was great. It was in January, and I have not touched it since. So I keep on meaning to read comics. I have some comics borrowed from my friend since like January, February. I really need to give them back to him, so I really need to do some of that. And as I mentioned earlier, I also read some mashed potato books, some books that I have had on my TBR for a really long time. Mashed Potato May was a great month for reading, and I made some lists of some of those books that I read. I had The Scarlet Pimpernel, which is a book that I had on my TBR probably close to 10 years. I wanted to read it because I love superheroes and I love the story of this, and this is one of the first masked vigilantes and kind of the origin of that, and some inspiration that was taken into Batman and other heroes at the time. So yeah, I really wanted to read that one, and I did. It was okay. I also read the Odyssey. This was a surprise just because I got into Epic Musical and I read it, and I hope to read the Iliad next year and kind of have some big classics taken off my shelf. I'm currently reading War and Peace, as I told you, and Howard's End, which are on my list for so long. And then I read House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. Loved it, one of my favorite books of the year. Things Fall Apart, and this is a book that was on my TBR for a really, really long time. I didn't like it and The Era of God as much, but the middle one, No Longer at Ease, incredible. And then I also conquered childhood, youth, and dependency, as well as many years of wanting to read Discworld and not reading it. I started with Equal Rights, and I would have continued on if the holds for the other books in the series were not so long, and I'm so sad about that. But yes, I definitely want to read more Terry Pratchett, more Discworld. It was incredible. And then the last question is, have you already started making goals for next year? And I think because I've not been reading a ton this year, I've not been as energized, but I do want to continue on with reading some books that I've been putting off for a long time. And I do have a tab for each year on my Libby app. And I did move The Death of Arthur onto there. So I really hope to read some Arthurian romance next year. I have like a big collection of it as well that I would like to read some parts from it, but I'll probably also use audio for part of it. And yeah, I really hope to read the Iliad and some other big classics that I've just been putting off for way too long because I know they're big or they feel intimidating. And yeah, I will have a list at the beginning of next year of classics I want to read. I think I will continue on with probably trying to be slower. I am hopeful that I might actually still get to 100 books. This year I chose purposely to choose only 80, even though every single year since my first year on BookTube, I have read normally at least 120, if not more. And yeah, this year I put it at 80. I'm currently at 70 and it's the beginning of October, so I think I will pass 100, especially since I read 17 books last month. So my fall reading lots has started. I would love to hear what your fall plans are, how your goals are doing, what kind of vibe and energy do you have during the fall? Do you read classics? Do you read fantasy? Do you read contemporary? I would love to hear about it, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.